Hi, and welcome back to Shadow Phoenix with Dory. And I wanted to do a part two on the fear episode that I filmed yesterday. We talked a little bit about false fear and real fear and the difference between those two and how you can find out for yourself. Sorry that this is shaking so much. Um, what I reflected on after I put out that video was that there is a huge social aspect for a lot of people. I know that for myself personally, I have confronted this a lot as I have made strides to come out of living in fear myself and taking a more proactive approach to my life, my attitudes, my language, some of the things that I'm doing. I have encountered in other people this fearful mindset. And I want to describe it as a fearful mindset because you can be in it or out of it at any given time. I don't really feel like it's ever something that we graduate from, per se. Some people aren't aware that they're in it, and this is how they live. This is the foundation for their lives. This is their beliefs, their core beliefs and paradigms are fearful and limiting. Some people have awareness of that, some people don't. And even people that have awareness of it, it's very easy, as I talked about in yesterday's video, it's very easy to get back into that and to be pulled into it. And if you've ever, like the analogy I use is like lobsters or crabs in the pot cooking on the stove. If one's able to get out, sometimes those other lobsters will pull them back down into the pot. And when you're trying to move out of a fear mindset into a proactive, healthy, empowered paradigm, it can feel that way. It can feel like people want to pull you back down. That prevailing energy, that cultural paradigm, I think for Western civilization, it's very much a cultural paradigm that we have lived with and cultivated. And right now, with the current events happening, it's the perfect scenario for people that want to move out of fear, gives them the perfect backdrop socially to be able to separate from the fear narrative into a proactive stance in their life. And yet, we are going to encounter this in people who still live from a fear mindset or happen to be in any given moment in a fear mindset. Um, and so, short of isolating ourselves and breaking off relationships with anybody who might be in a fear mindset, how do we deal with that? In a practical level, what skills can we use? How can we address this? And how can we plan for success around this topic, knowing that there are going to be people that we know and love, people that are close to us, people that love us and genuinely care for us and are doing what they can do to what they see as keep us safe? How do we address this with other people? I have encountered some of this again, and in some different ways. So, one of the ways that I've encountered this, as I've made more strides to be proactive, to go from my vision, to live from a purpose or a mission driven point of view, and to really let go of fear and assume basic goodness, assume that the universe is supportive, assume that God's out there going to help me, support me, that the universe is there supporting me, assuming that I'm going to have what I need to move forward. Those are not fear-based messages. And so people, when they hear that, sometimes that can be triggering for them. Like their fear feels triggered in them because of what they're hearing from me. I have had people, I guess you could say like speak against or like, oh, be careful. Like they'll give me warnings or say that feels scary. You just got out of this situation or there's a scenario or this could happen, or they will begin to let that fear narrative come out of their mouth with me as the storyline and say, Dory, look at all these bad things that could happen. You want to be careful. Don't, like, I would caution you. I would suggest, like, please don't, like, just hold on, like, think again. Again, this hesitancy, this inactivity, like this loop that they're in. Um, and so when you're doing that, and you're coming across that, what I like to do is hold space for myself and say, Dory, you haven't done anything wrong. This is the self-talk. This is where you're at, and this is where they're at. And we don't shame or condemn or label or judge where other people are at. They're having a genuine experience that for them is fearful. They're afraid in that moment. And we can have compassion for them, understanding what fear feels like, having done the work ourselves. And we can hold space for ourselves to be where we want to be. And yet we can also at the same time simultaneously hold space for this other person to be where they are in a very genuine way. and at the same time not have to go down to that level of engaging in their fear narrative for ourselves. Um, and so you can say, hey, I understand that this can be a scary thought. Sometimes reassuring people can help you. Again, you say this for yourself, not necessarily for them. That's stage one. I understand you're having a reaction. I hear that you care about me. You can just validate where they're at without sharing it, without acquiescing to their fear narrative about you. You can just simply provide space for them to have an experience and just let it be okay. The second stage, and I really feel like in light of current events and in light of the awakening that's happening as a conscious collective, as people who individually are waking up and becoming aware and in a wholeness journey, a wellness journey, an integrative journey, and an empowering journey, people individually have collected enough of a tipping point that I think that we're now ready to start inviting people over into a freedom-based, wholeness-based approach and say, sounds like you're afraid right now. You can just simply acknowledge where they're at and then invite them. I'd like to invite you on my journey where I believe that I am fundamentally safe, secure, cared for, loved, and competent. I would like to invite you into my narrative where I'm living from vision, I'm living from purpose, I'm looking forward, and I'm going to take action, believing that the best is always happening and always working out for me. I think that we're there. I think that we can start to gently point out to somebody what we're hearing and then invite, not demand, but we can invite. This is what I'm doing. Would you like to come with me? Another thing that I have noticed has happened is that if I happen to be verbalizing something that somebody who's in a fear-based paradigm at that moment relates to and resonates with, they will give me approval. They will give me approval and affirmation, and they'll say, "Oh, that sounds smart. That I'm glad you're thinking that way. Like, yeah, that I think that's a very prudent. It'll be very logical. It'll be very like yes, like you're fitting in this peg. Like this is very good, sane, logical kind of sense that you're making." And I have been kind of tripped in my own self-awareness to go, wait a minute, I know this person to be somebody who can be very fear-based. Why are they approving of what I just said? Like, what did I just say? Like, let me re-roll that tape back and have some self-awareness on myself about what I just said, because this person's now approving of me. Let me double check that. And so the ways that this fear mindset spreads culturally and just person to person can be very insidious, because if you are getting these messages of care and concern, like be careful, I love you, or look how smart you're being by this fear-based methodology that you're talking about, like, wow, that care and concern and that love and approval that we, if we haven't had a healing journey ourselves and we give ourselves that love and approval, that can be very seductive and toxic, because we can betray ourselves from living our mission oriented life to being sold back into this trade where I'm trading my freedom, I'm trading who I know myself to be to stay in relationship with this person or to take this affirmation I haven't learned to give myself, but I'm going to take their affirmation because I haven't learned to give it myself. And so some of these social things are what pulls the lobster back down into the pot. And so I wanted to point out that that's a thing that can happen, and that if you are new at living free from fear, free from false fear, that you can anticipate that something like this could happen for you. And I want to encourage you to plan for success. How are you going to handle this when it comes up? And again, I think that we are now at the point in time socially where we can start to invite people, into a journey of wholeness, security, abundance, prosperity, vision, mission. We can begin to set those invitations and just verbally say, I want to invite you into the story that I tell myself about what's happening right now. Um, and I think that that is something that, again, I think that we're ready for. So there's that. Let me think what else I was going to say. And again, I want to reiterate, this is not like a yes, no. I think the digital age has really like made us think like, oh, I do this or I don't do this. Everybody does it. It's degrees, it's shades of gray, it's on a spectrum. We're moving out of this we're moving towards vision, mission, abundance, security, love. So to say that you or other people are going to never be in this state of mind is false. And that's one of the things that can be really difficult, is we don't want to like label people and say, oh, well, you're fear-based, you're fear-minded. No, it's a thing that's out there. Sometimes we trip into it. We can also leave it. That's another great thing about being able to have a really flexible way that you think about yourself, as far as being egolessness is what the Buddhists call it, being able to be fluid about your belief about yourself. Because if you trip into this, don't feel committed to follow it out. Go, oops, I stepped in it, I'm going to step right back out. And to begin to see yourself and understand and believe yourself and experience yourself to be somebody who lives from vision, who lives from mission, from abundance, from a place of security and love, so that when you go there, it feels uncomfortable. Because the more that you live from your mission and from love, from your own empowerment, the more uncomfortable it will be to have somebody say, you can't do that, you need to be careful. Or you're going to notice when you're betraying yourself, your true self, for somebody else's approval, because you're now partnering with them in fear. Um, I think that one of the things I want to highlight here is we will have a certain break of fellowship with people who remain in a fear mindset when we begin to live from our empowerment and from a vision oriented place. I just want to call that out. It can be difficult. It can be hard. And again, we have to have a really strong sense of who we are and our own personal sense of worth, sense of mission, our own love for ourselves, because it's the hardest work of all to grow past people, to be able to keep that fidelity to yourself, your allegiance to yourself and who you are, the path of healing, the path of wholeness that you're on, and give yourself permission to grow past and beyond people. So, being able to give yourself permission to grow past people can be hard, especially if it's a new skill. You might feel like you're betraying somebody. You might feel really lost and like you don't have an anchor. I really feel too like the divine feminine, females, so to speak, but just the energy of the feminine is so committed to relationship and to bridge building that sometimes the problem that we can fall into when we're looking to have this connection with people is that we can betray ourselves and our own authenticity, our own sense of who we are, in order to stay in relationship when somebody else is presenting us with something that really we should not be in relationship with. I think the boundaryless female is something that, again, as a collective, we're growing out of. And this is how we know, is that if I'm trading who I am to be in relationship with you, or to take, your sense of approval for me that I don't know yet how to give myself, that's a sick place to be. That's codependency. That's where abuse happens. That's where, this like empath narcissist relationship dynamic flourishes, is when we are selling out who we are in favor of another person on whatever level. And that presents itself in all sorts of ways. But it's time for us to be able to take that power back, personal empowerment. This is not about controlling somebody else. This is not about dominating somebody else. It's not about labeling or judging their journey or where they're at on it. It's about personal empowerment and saying, this is who I am. This is how I choose to live. This is where I am going. This is the energy I choose to keep for myself. These are the kind of relationships that I choose to engage in. And it's okay to take that stance and to begin to own that energy as you're moving forward. And for some people who are new on this journey, leaving behind people who don't choose to keep up with you and grow with you can be difficult. And it can be difficult to take that power for yourself and say that this is where I'm going. And I think that's what has kept a lot of people from growing, is wanting to stay in relationship, even if they're sick, even if it's a sick relationship or there's dynamics there that aren't helpful. And so this is why it's so important to, again, that's its own fear loop on its own, is it not? Have you ever been in that situation and known that you're ready for more, and then that fear loop keeps you stuck or trapped or isolated or imprisoned or, captured to this dynamic that you really don't want to be in, and you know that, but now you have a fear loop. So this is why this is all relevant, is because sometimes the relationships that we're in are the very things that we're looking for freedom from. And sometimes if, again, we've been on this journey and we're going into it, some of these things can be new and we don't always think about these people that truly love us and that we truly love them. It could be family, could be longtime partners, friends, whoever, that we know that there's a genuine care and concern for. And yet at the same time, if we haven't learned to have loyalty to ourselves, um, the difficulty of calling it out and being honest about what's happening can be really hard for us. So I hope that makes sense. I think I'm going to wrap it up. But again, just to recap, on this journey out of fear, taking back your own power to live from your own sense of well-being and prosperity and vision, if you encounter people socially that are going to try to pull you back down into the pot, be ready for that. If it happens for you, and maybe it won't, you could run with a very evolved crowd. If it happens for you, have something ready and prepared so that you know how you're going to navigate this. And also, I want to encourage you, don't feel that you have to have some elaborate script memorized. The fact that you have self-awareness in that moment of what's occurring is really it. How you choose to respond is also its own growth journey. How you choose to respond is going to change and evolve and grow as you do and become more skillful at this. So that's really not the point. The point is just being aware that these things could occur and having your commitment be solidly within your own self, your own allegiance to yourself, your own higher knowing, your own inner self, to live the kind of life that you want to live. Okay, so blessings to you all. Hope you're having a great day. See you around.